I like to talk about Gen Z in the workforce and do they really have a poor work ethic? And did the poor work ethic start with like millennials and Gen Z? Because honestly, as a guy who's a late stage millennial, early Gen Zer myself, I have seen some pretty negative attitudes as a millennial working with other millennials. And, when you see headlines about Gen Z getting fired at exorbitant rates, obviously they had the millennials to be the models for them, and the millennials had the models from the Gen Xers, and so on and so forth. But with Gen Xers, it's like I've worked with those guys too. Gen X, I could call it a mixed bag. Millennials, I call it a mixed bag. And Gen Z, I call it a mixed bag. But I could see where it goes in, but I don't want to look at it through like an ageism thing. But I think that now we're getting less good workers than bad. And I don't think it's about age. I think it's about lack of guidance figures, lack of incentive, lack of a lot of things. Now, I am of the mind that, yeah, the younger generations are getting worse, more nihilistic, harder to, I wouldn't say control. That's not the word I want to use, but harder to get on a good path in life. And I know a lot of people, oh, well, a good path is subjective. Yeah, you know what? A 9-to-5 job isn't the only way to do it. But, you can't just live in anarchy and live lawlessness. Some people actually do take it that far, not all, but I have seen enough to the point where it is worth mentioning. Like lack of incentive, obviously the cost of living is going up at exorbitant rates. A lot of people are realizing that college isn't quite the investment that they thought it was. And you know what? As a millennial who went to college when it was advertised as the best thing ever, let me tell you, I feel the demoralization when it comes to that because we were told that that was going to get us somewhere in life. And a lot of us are a little mad because it didn't. So I feel that. But I'd also like to bring up another thing that Gen X does have its bad apples too. I know a lot of people like to glaze Gen X, and don't get me wrong, there's a lot of people I hang out with in Gen X that I love hanging out with, people who are older than me, because I kind of do get along with those people because we have the similar respect and everything like that. We don't all share the same lifestyle, we don't always agree on everything, and we're not always on the same beat, but I could tolerate a lot more Gen Xers and, for lack of a better term, boomers, I guess you could say, just because in my life I had to grow up fast. I was subjected to a lot very soon. So I understand what it's like to have to put your best foot forward and have to survive. But I have had my fair share of Gen Xers who do make the workforce a little bit worse of a place. I have seen people in their 50s and 60s with ego problems who could turn a warehouse job into like something like a prison sentence because they have to show that they're the warden, they're the biggest, baddest dude in that warehouse. And you do not forget, I actually do remember that one time. There was a guy who walked out of a warehouse job once and never came back. And then we actually had a manager there who was really cool, but she was butting heads with the other Gen Xer management. And when I had to deal with them, they were horrible. I understand why she left, but she finally stormed out and said, I've had enough. She quit. And then she told me she was quitting. But then they brought in the guy that walked off the job one day and never even called back in. So it already shows you that just because you're older doesn't mean you make good judgment calls. And this guy turned that job upside down. He had to show that he was the dominant force, right? And me, with my background, I wasn't willing to take any sort of crap from this dude. They literally had to move me to a different department in that store, more of like the manufacturing, to avoid a fight breaking out pretty much, because we were about to get to that point because we were both two very headstrong individuals. And me, I was coming from a place of I just want respect. He wanted dominance in that place. And I was like, you know what, you could have it. But he would take, by dominance, he meant he would always have to pin everything on the person he didn't like. He was abusing his power. So trust me, I've had my own fair share of bad, experience with Gen X. Even when like some person lied about me on a job site or something like that, there was a Gen Xer that was very quick to believe it and really try to ostracize me or lead a giant social revolt, which kind of fell flat because he didn't have the power he thought he does. And I could tell that he was just a miserable person who didn't live his life the way he thought he did. He always like flexed to me. Like I remember one day he actually said, "Oh, dude, I used to beat up Jake Shields on an MMA team," because he knows I like martial arts, right? So he would always talk about that and everything like that. But I highly doubt it, because when it came time to actually make eye contact with me, when he actually wanted to start in with me, I kept my eyes on his and he looked down at the floor and stormed past me. Really, he didn't do anything. So I was like, yeah, no, you were not Jake Shields' like nemesis in the gym that never got his shot at the UFC, dude. You are full of it. But I also know some millennials. Now millennials and Gen Zers in the workforce, yeah, no, they could be a little bit more harder to deal with. You're going to find more hard ones to deal with, mainly because as a millennial, I will say we are a jaded bunch. And now that we're getting older and we're becoming as old as the Gen Xers, we have been put through the ringer quite a bit. So I think a lot of it is not just narcissism, but jadedness. And Gen Z, I think right now it's just narcissism. The jadedness is probably going to come later. But I've actually had the displeasure of working with a few millennials who are just absolutely terrible. Not as eventful of stories, but usually always running to HR over small things and everything like that. And I'm not even a guy that makes a whole lot of noise at work, don't get me wrong, but when you see the amount of people turning on each other like a pack of wild wolves and using HR as their big thing to, kind of play a game of Assassin's Creed Online, it kind of shows that the workplace is becoming way too high schooly. But I guess that's just my type of age range that's in the workforce. I mean, I never run to HR or anything. In fact, honestly, I just email them because you got to put it in writing that you went there, because HR is there to help the company, not the employee. Just remember that. But I think Gen Zer is definitely a different type, because let me be honest, like I see those headlines where they can't find as much work anymore. Now, is that specific because Gen Z is taking over the workforce? I think that's part of it. Now, Gen Z is basically the first of all the generations to be raised solely in the digital age. They were introduced to Skibbity Toilet Riz way earlier in life than any of us were. So although I don't think it's the whole part, you could tell me that, yeah, no, like attention spans and everything like that, and like the age of narcissism, people who post about their jobs all the time on TikTok and all that stuff, like all the time. I'm not saying like every now and again, but they have to show every detail about their life and their job and what they do like it's a movie. I could see where some companies would be like, okay, we don't want that around here. But also I think around the same time, Gen Z is actually learning from us millennials and all the burnout and the rundown and the wear down that we're going through. And I think a lot of Gen Zers who come out fresh are actually like, they're not really necessarily beaten down by life too much yet, but they're curious enough to ask questions. And one of the most obvious questions that they could look up to people my age and say is, what happened to you? And I could say, you know what, dude, we were told and promised one thing and we did everything we were supposed to do, and we got absolutely shafted for it. Here's the mistakes that we made that you could avoid, but here's the pearls of wisdom I could offer you guys. So honestly, a lot of us are just saying, hey, think before you go to college, or if you're going to go to college, go for something super useful. But even then, a lot of the quote-unquote useful majors seem a little ambiguous. In fact, I honestly think a lot of people should go to trade school before they think of investing in a 4-year opportunity like college, because it is very expensive and you might change your mind over those 4 years. And if you change your mind too late, you're stuck with the degree. Now, obviously, it's not going to determine your job, but you know my spiel. But most of the things I'm doing in life right now, I currently don't really think that the college degree really helped. I mean, it kind of did in a little bit. I mean, I'm pretty sure some people probably phoned me up when I was applying to jobs because I had a degree. They didn't care what it was in. So there's something there. But for the most part, it was a lot of debt, a lot of money. And it's not going to promise you the type of lifestyle you think it is. It's just going to make you like everybody else. But I know a lot of people who didn't go to college who are doing better than people who went to college. So you want to know something? Maybe, just maybe, it's like, yeah, no, Gen Z is seeing the patterns. And it's not just with work, it's with life. It's like how we've been expected. Because I think like Gen X, how they live their life is the same thing to how millennials expected to. But then we're reaching down and we're telling Gen Z, like, look, maybe it's not all worth it. I know you guys want to work hard. And in fact, here's the thing. I don't think anyone truly is lazy. Well, no, I take that back. Most people genuinely aren't lazy. They want to work. And here's the thing. Midway through this year, me and my buddy were going camping, and we had a conversation about this, right? And I said, it doesn't seem like it's not that people just don't want to work. My buddy finished the statement for me. He said, you know what it is? People don't want to work to no end. People don't want to work absolutely for nothing. And I think with Gen Z, that's where it starts, like this mass disillusionment, which, I'm not saying it's completely hopeless. I'm not saying it's all going to fall apart, but I do think that there's some growing pains that our workforce needs to go through if they want to incentivize people coming back to work and working hard and making a strong workforce. Because at the same time, although I know that there's some people who, were just born into their phones and don't want to leave, there's some people who went into their phones because they just didn't see any incentive to actually living a life outside of the digital realm. Gen Zers included. I could see a bunch of Gen Zers in the real world who, said, you know what, I'm not going to go into the phones just yet. And then they try to live real life. And here's the thing. I understand what it's like to try and better yourself only to have a door slammed in your face and be told, we don't want you here. There's actually a story I could tell about the first martial arts academy that I ever attended. And let's just say I was doing it to better myself, but it became so cliquey that I was not able to get the training I need. I moved on and went to a different one and I got better training. But it's bad to, to know that we, want to encourage, oh, why aren't people doing it better? Like, why aren't people trying to get better? I think there's a lot of people who tried to get better, but they just didn't get the help or they didn't get the guidance they needed. It just happens, So we can't just look at these people who don't want to work anymore and call them lazy because we don't know what's really going through their minds. I mean, yeah, I'm pretty sure there's a couple lazy people, but come on, let's not have a total lack of empathy. And I'm not really just here to offer a solution because really at the end of the day, I don't know. One person cannot turn around the tide that we are seeing right now. Now, is there going to be different incentive structures placed in? Maybe. Is the taste in the mouth about working a 9 to 5 so bad now that people would rather just live in debt, not go to work, and take their time playing video games their whole life? I hate to think that that's the case, but, that sometimes is what happens. There is a thing called demoralization that I think is a contributing factor to Gen Z. And now I don't think that, like all the reasons I said that are empathetic towards Gen Z and millennials and current, sometimes Gen Xers towards the workforce, because this goes towards everybody and how they're looking at the workforce right now. But for Gen Z, it certainly is part. Now, I do think that there is some truth to the age of narcissism, too, because when you have a bunch of people who come into the workforce thinking it's all about them, which honestly, it didn't start with Gen Z. It really just kind of started a couple generations ago. I think Gen Z has just had it amplified via social media and their own public image, and also low self-esteem where they have to flex so they could seem big because they don't want to be at a normal stasis. I think over time, I could see who really genuinely has confidence and who's just trying to boast to hide something. But it's like throwing gasoline on a fire when you have that bad of stuff, because those are the people who want to go into the workforce, right? Let me tell you a story. So I was actually applying to be a personal trainer for a gym that was coming up, and I went to the recruitment center. And the reason I went to the recruitment center was because I actually called up one of the locations. Why did I do that? Because the person who was supposed to be interviewing me, right, was actually giving me the wrong address intentionally so I could miss my interview time for whatever reason. Now, this person was, close to my age, about late stage millennial, early Gen Z, but enough to fall into the age range of narcissism and, high school behavior in the workforce. So I call up one of the gym locations, go to the recruitment center, and then I show up, and guess what? She's there, and that's the one address she actually begged me not to go to. Now, I saw that as very shady behavior. The second I sit down, I was like, man, it took me a while to get here, but here I am. She already tried turning around on me and saying, you could stop showing me attitude or else I'm not going to hire you, right? Like, she was trying to turn it around on me because she knew that she did not have any excuse for what she did. I caught her red-handed. She was trying to get me out of the interview so she could go home early or whatever. So I already called her out on this to her face because I told her, look, I don't even care about the job anymore because I think your behavior is disgusting. I would never work for someone like you. I told her, I'm guessing at the drop of my hat, that, you're probably trying to hire all your friends, so you're trying to filter out who gets the interview and who doesn't, and trying to give them the wrong address is not going to help, because I'm going to figure it out because I know how to do my own research. And I basically went on to say that what she did is probably the reason why a lot of this workforce is falling apart, is because that's why a lot of hard workers don't want to join anymore. So I walked out, and then I told her I got to write a letter to corporate, not because I think that they're going to get rid of you, but because I want to leave a paper trail in case you ever try to slander me, because I just know that you're a pathological liar, and I do not trust you. So I did. I got all the receipts and writing and everything like that, so if someone ever contacted me about it, I would have my side of the story. But when you have that kind of exclusive, high schooly behavior in the workforce, I'm wondering how many people have been robbed of a fair chance to get a job, or at least just been given 15 minutes a day to have an interview. Because if she would have just sat me down, done the interview, and not hired me, I could have lived like that. But the fact that people that are younger in the workforce are making it so obvious that they are pulling that shady stuff, I think that our generation is going to be a little bit more corrupt than the last one. I know that that's not the most popular thing to say, and I know that Gen Z already has a bad rep with a uphill battle to face that, hopefully when they grow up to it and are old enough to realize it, they don't get overwhelmed. But with the age of narcissism, I think there's going to be a lot more white collar crimes going on. That's all I could say. But other than that, though, in conclusion, I think it's just a multi-generational thing, right? For you to say that it's just Gen Z, like I said, it's a bigger problem with Gen Z, but I think it's been a long time coming. And, it's almost like when you blame a child for how they become adults, you have to look at the parent and learn what they've learned from that parent. It is handed down. As a person who wanted guidance growing up and really never got it, I could obviously say that a lot of people come in looking for guides or looking for a way to do it right, because I think that there's a lot more good people than bad people when we start out. I think the good people get corrupted through bad circumstances. They just wanted a guide, someone to show them how it's done, but sometimes they have to find their own way on how it's done. And when you want someone to find out their own way of how it's done, you can't get mad at them for figuring out in a way that's not really convenient for you because you were never really there. But that's what I got to say. That's my thoughts on the workforce. But no, I don't think it's just Gen Z. I just think with Gen Z taking over, they don't have good guides, and it's probably going to be in for a bumpier ride. Now, is it a complete black pill like there's hopelessness? No, I just say that because this is my honest opinion on the workforce. And why do I call this video Gen Z in the workforce, or does Gen Z? I don't even know what I'm going to title this video. It's because they're the ones who are going to have to deal with the future way longer than I am. I'm going to be in the workforce for a very long time. We have to work. We have to make a living. We have to eat. But the younger people are now starting to come in. So if this finds any of you guys, just let you know it's not your fault. I know you guys have an uphill battle to face, but I am rooting for you in your corner. I can't quite give you advice because everyone's thing is different on an individual basis. So I can't, reach out to all you individually and give you a guide to your story, but I do wish you the best, and just know that there is someone who is rooting for you and hoping it works out best. Peace out. Later. See you on the next one.